Well, I can't see you, but I'm glad you're all here with us anyway. I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off. You are, just to make sure you're in the right place, welcome to the Summer Learning Framework webinar series. We're here focused on topic 6, high quality instructional materials, specifically Amplify Texas Elementary Literacy Program. My name is Libby Ryder, and I'm very happy to have all of you here with me this afternoon. The Summer Learning Framework helps districts with designing, planning, and onboarding supports to implement a high-quality summer learning program. There are 3 main components of the framework. First, we're offering a webinar series, which you're in right now. This is the first of 10 sessions designed to support you with all you need to set this up. Second is a bank of tools and templates to help you plan a strong summer school experience for teachers and students. And third is a summer resource library. All of our THL curriculum partners have provided recommended instructional resources for summer programming. These resources are optional. You may choose to use some or all of them based on your needs. And you can see this texasHomeLearning.org website is going to be really consistently referenced across our slides. And if you don't already have that page bookmarked, I recommend you go ahead and do that. Just want to do a quick reminder about some of the things offered under the COVID Recovery Instructional Materials Support Initiative, which is a mouthful, so we call it CRIMSI. I know everyone needs another acronym in their life. There are a few participation options. First is spring adoption coaching. This is starting now, and it's focused on helping lay the groundwork for strong implementation of THL instructional materials next year. We're also launching a summer pilot of instructional materials. The deadline is Friday. Complete your application if you want to participate, and you can see the application information is here at the Texas Home Learning website /CRIMSI. And we will talk a little bit more about the summer pilot here coming up. So as you can see, for people who choose to apply and are selected for the CRIMSI Summer Pilot, stipends will be available for educators who participate. And participation means that they're doing things like feedback surveys, professional learning and coaching sessions. Everything is open for all, so you can access these materials even if you don't participate in the Summer Pilot. But we really are encouraging everyone to consider this great opportunity. And we know how much educators appreciate the opportunity to earn some extra stipends for their great work. So I want to make sure to highlight that. And then want to come back to this graphic and talk a little bit about our final CRIMSI initiative, which is next year's full pilot option for districts who are interested in piloting materials for the entire school year. If you have a little bit more time to learn about this opportunity and decide, and using the materials for summer learning could be a good test run before the full school year adoption. But you can see that the full year pilot is like another great support opportunity to help with accelerating student learning growth. Again, lots of pathways for involvement and support with getting these high quality TEKS aligned resources. Here's an overview of the Summer Learning webinar series. There's a lot going on, and the green box shows where we are today. We're talking about Amplify reading K through 5 in English and Spanish. There are some more webinars coming up, and many are already ready for you. You can see again, our Texas Home Learning website at the bottom shows where you can find some of these webinars that say recording now available next to them. This is a picture of one of our planning tools. So as I mentioned, one aspect of the Summer Learning Framework is having access to a bank of resources that help folks plan a strong summer learning opportunity for students. So this is a picture of a roadmap for designing your high quality summer school plan. Today we're in the purple bar where we're focused on the rigorous work we're going to engage our students in to help accelerate their learning in the summer. So speaking of high quality, rigorous instructional materials, I'm going to turn us over to my colleague Jamie with Amplify, and she's going to tell us more about Amplify, the Amplify Texas Elementary Literacy Program. So let me stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to her.
Okay, super. Let me get shared here for you.
And folks, while Jamie is getting set up, just really want to encourage you to use the chat or Q&A functions here to ask any questions you have as we go along, but also want you to know that we are going to have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar. So if questions come up for you and you'd like to ask them, we will have time for that.
Okay, super. Libby, can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. So thanks so much for joining this afternoon. It's Thursday afternoon. We're almost there at the end of the week. We're going to spend some time talking about the Amplify Texas Elementary Literacy Program. So it's kindergarten through 5th grade, both in English and in Spanish. Like Libby mentioned, we're recording this session, so you're going to have access to it afterwards to be able to watch again or share with other colleagues or be able to look at certain parts. And if you have questions, there's a couple spots built in along the way that we'll pause and make sure that everybody is up to speed before we move on. And like Libby mentioned, we will also be spending the last few minutes just answering any unanswered questions before we wrap up our time together today. My name is Jamie Klistic. I'm the director of kindergarten through 8th grade English Language Arts Professional Development Partnerships. What that really means, that's a mouthful, sort of like Crimsy, right? But that just means I'm working with all of our Amplify K-8 partners across the country, supporting implementations, helping with professional development, and really anything that is needed in order to be successful when making some changes to their language arts programming. So I'm really glad to be here today. I'm looking forward to continuing to learning with all of you as well. So if you are a veteran to Texas home learning, this should look familiar. We know that we've got some folks who've been utilizing some of the program resources, and I imagine we may have some folks with us today who are new. And so if you have navigated to the site and have registered and you're signed up and are able to log in, this should look familiar. This is the landing page that you would see once you get to that website. If you're not familiar with it, just a couple quick things. It's really easy to navigate. You'll see here, this is a grade 3 example, but you would obviously have access to grades kindergarten through 5th grade. In this left-hand corner here where it says grade 3, it's actually clickable. You can choose, click on that whenever you visit the site, and you can choose the grade that you're looking for. So kindergarten through 5th grade. And then on the right-hand side, there's 3 main options. There's the intro tab that gives you a little bit of background around all of the Amplify Texas program materials that you have, a little bit of the why behind them and what you have access to. There's the daily instruction tab and then the program resources tab. This daily instruction tab is where you're going to spend the bulk of your time. This is where your materials are. This is where student materials are. This is where teacher-facing materials are. This is where everything that you would need is included and embedded in this tab in order to utilize the program. And so I called out just a couple boxes from that tab here so you can see when we go into a deeper level of that screenshot of instruction, you'll see that you've got your unit levels here available both in English and Spanish. And then you'll also see your student-facing materials there. So that daily instruction tab will become your close friend as you're getting used to all the program materials because it houses everything. And then that program resources section, that's where you're going to see things like some planning templates, some additional professional learning resources, some recordings of webinars that we've done already this year. So some backlog of some additional learning, if you want to check those out, that all lives there as well. So just a quick lay of the land of what that Texas Home Learning website looks like if you're not familiar. So just a brief idea of where we're going today. We want to talk before we dive into summer school, because we know that's why you're all here. We want to make sure that everybody is on the same playing field in terms of what Amplify Texas K-5 is, a little bit about the design idea and sort of philosophy behind it, as well as what is included. So what are the components that you have access to? And then we'll spend the second part of our time looking at summer school. Amplify has provided some recommendations around programming, both 3-week and 6-week programming. And we'll talk about what that means. And if you're running a different sort of length of time, how that will, how you can utilize the recommended resources. But we'll focus on summer school in the second part, and then wrap up with any questions that we still may have about the program and or summer school. So before we jump into summer school recommendations, we wanted to make sure that we provide an overview of the program. It's important for all of you to know that Amplify Texas is a literacy. It is a core instruction program that is grounded in the science of reading. This should look familiar to you. For our K2 program, we have a two-strand approach. So it's designed around those two strands that's based off of the idea that reading is a combination of two things. One being able to decode and another being able to comprehend. In our kindergarten, first and second grade program materials, that decoding instruction is largely found in our Skills Strand. And then in the kindergarten, first and second grade knowledge strand, that's where we have a major emphasis on comprehension. You'll see as we start to explore the program further and look at all the different grade levels, when we get to grades 3 through 5, those two strands are integrated, they're combined, because this is where we're moving from our K2 of learning to read into that idea of reading to learn. This likely looks familiar for some of you as well, also known as the simple view of reading. But we are focusing on it as presented as Scarborough's rope. So this graphic is just those ideas that we've got those two strands connected to what we just talked about with that simple view of reading, making sure that within that language comprehension strand, that upper strand, that's where that knowledge is building. That's where that knowledge starts as early as kindergarten, with building background knowledge through different opportunities around listening comprehension, read alouds, vocabulary, and then moving into that bottom strand where that is focused on skills, being able to decode, identifying letters, sounds, putting all those things together to create words. And then as our students become increasingly more strategic because they're getting systematic and explicit instruction, those strands start to combine. So we move from learning to read to reading to learn in our upper grades. This also may look familiar to you. This is built around a study that was created by Recht and Leslie, often known as the baseball study. So it takes into consideration that there are lots of different types of learners. Researchers determined students' reading ability by their performance on standardized reading assessments, and then gave students a pretest. So it was read orally by their teacher to assess background knowledge around baseball. The students were then able to silently read a passage about baseball and then respond to questions on text. So as you can imagine, there were students that had high reading ability and high knowledge of baseball scored the highest on that assessment, where our students with low reading ability and low knowledge about baseball scored the lowest. What was really interesting that came out of the study was that we had students that had low reading ability but high knowledge on baseball. So they knew something about the game. And that we also had students that had low reading ability, or I'm sorry, high knowledge about baseball and low reading abilities. But the interesting thing that happened about this is that our readers with low ability but high knowledge simply had the context to understand what was happening when we're saying something like Robert sacrificed a play to Martin to second, and then Martin was in scoring position. However, it wasn't clear to their peers. And even if the high ability readers were able to decode that text, their lack of knowledge ended up hindering them in the long run. So our goal across our program here is to really build up students' background knowledge through a variety of texts that have a variety of different topics to increase students' background knowledge. The importance of background knowledge and building some systematic background knowledge within grades and across grades is equally important. And you'll see that as we continue to think about the design of the program across grades and within grades. If you're familiar with the Amplify Texas literacy program, this may look familiar as well. These are just showing some very simple connections that happen across the year. So starting as early in kindergarten all the way through 5th grade, students engage in a variety of really context-rich topics within their grade levels. But then what also happens is across grade levels, they start to build and expand across that background knowledge. So you start to see some themes and some topics happen within grades and then also across grades, which is ultimately building to more successful readers as they're starting to move from learning to read to reading to learn, because they're building that listening comprehension and building background knowledge all through word knowledge and world knowledge. We think those things are really important, and that's one of the key program designs when we're thinking about the K-5 Amplify Texas Literacy Program. The other thing important to just mention is that we also want to stress the importance of listening comprehension. We recognize that listening comprehension sometimes takes a little bit longer, or listening comprehension is needed in terms of just ability to comprehend for students. You'll see that sometimes and oftentimes as students grow as readers, that idea of reading comprehension takes a little bit longer to develop as opposed to listening comprehension, which is why within our kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade strands, there are daily read alouds. We know the importance that students engage in high quality read aloud, high content, very complex text in those younger grades. And those complex texts also continue in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, with daily read alouds happening still in 3rd grade, and then less frequent read alouds happening in 4th and 5th grade, but still a read aloud component. And so you'll see that it's only by the age of 13 where that reading comprehension and listening comprehension actually starts to equal out. So we know the importance of listening comprehension for our very youngest learners in kindergarten. And if you think about those of you that have children, I'm sure you were also reading aloud to them at very, very early ages, knowing that they may not be able to read the print that is the text that's in print, but we know the importance of making sure that all students are hearing engaging, rich, complex text as read alouds. And so this is really important part of the program design, and really important when we're thinking about what is provided within Amplify Texas K-5, and that stress and that importance of listening comprehension as it's accompanying, as our students are gaining reading momentum and reading comprehension as well. If you're still learning about the program, some simple things that we wanted just to point out to you in terms of just the lay of the land of K2 and 3-5. So we typically say that within kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, you need 2 blocks of 60 minutes. So skills lessons are 60 minutes and knowledge lessons are 60 minutes. I also want to point out, and we'll stress and remind throughout the session today, our skills strand is available in English only. Our knowledge strand in K2 is available in English and Spanish. So again, if you're using both of those strands, it's 120 minutes combined in order to get through daily lessons. If you're using one or the other, they can stand alone. They are able to stand alone, and that's why it is a 2-strand approach. So you would need 60 minutes for each of those. So skills, English only in kindergarten through 2nd grade, and then knowledge, English and Spanish.
Jamie, do you mind if I interrupt real quick? Sure. And just clarify? So I did have a question earlier in the Q&A about Spanish skills. And I know this is something that our team is prioritizing getting out to you. So we had a question about when Spanish skills resources would be available. And our goal right now is to hopefully be able to offer those on like a rolling basis next school year. But that is something that is like a project that's in the works. It's our priority. We know how much it's needed for everyone in Texas. And we're taking our time because we want to make sure to get it right for kids and teachers. So keep an eye out for more information about that this summer, and hopefully throughout next school year, we'll be sharing units on a rolling basis.
Super, Libby. Thank you so much for chiming in there. I know, and I talk with districts all across Texas, and that is always a question that comes up of when can we expect it? So it's coming, it's in the works, and we want it, like Libby said, it needs to be done right, and so that's taking. There's time that needs to be spent there to make it right for all of you. The other thing on the other side of the program in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, this is that integrated strand. That's where we take those foundational skills, so those ability of learning to read and firming them up with that knowledge side of things, and we blend them together. And so that strand is available both in English and Spanish fully. In 3rd grade, we still have 120 minutes of instruction. So same number of minutes if you were doing both strands in K2 for 3rd grade. Reason being is that there are read alouds that are embedded within units. And we're also still in the first few units in 3rd grade, firming up those foundational skills, making sure that students, by the time they hit the first quarter in 3rd grade, that they have mastered all of that code knowledge that is so important to move to reading to learn. And then in 4th and 5th grade, 90 minutes. So 30 minutes less than K3, but our recommendation is always 90 minutes of core grade level instruction. We also wanted to talk a little bit about, so you're hearing that there's certain things available in English and certain in Spanish and some in both. And so we wanted to make sure to just address a couple things. We know there are a lot of different models that are used to support our bilingual students across the state. So the K5 knowledge units are structured in a way that supports these models. And we're going to take a look at how that might be supported on the next few slides. So for those of you that are using content-based or some pull-out English support or English ESL program support, you want to be aware of these features. These are really important, and these will be really helpful in terms of embedding that knowledge into units and lessons and making sure that our English language learners are supported. There are scaffolds that are built into every single lesson. You'll see that in what you see here in this gray bar here. We call those sidebar supports. These are scaffolds that are built in and that are directly in the teacher guides. So these are things that teachers aren't creating or having to look for or to plan for from scratch. These are already there. I will mention that, obviously with any additional planning, those are things that we would highly recommend that are done in an advanced preparation prior to that daily lesson or prior to getting into that point of the lesson. But we have multiple ways that learning can be supported and scaffolded so students can be successful within the lesson. We also have a lot of different opportunities for images that teachers don't have to also look for. The images are included. We've got the digital image cards that you'll have in your program resources on the website that you'll have access to, as well as actual read-alouds that have been recorded and are available to you in both English and Spanish. So the actual read-alouds are recorded and available for you to use as an additional support, as additional instruction, as also read aloud opportunities that students can do, obviously both at school and also at home. Another really important feature is knowing that we are providing really explicit and meaningful vocabulary instruction that's incorporated in a lot of different ways. So you'll see here an example from one of our teacher guides of just explicit instruction around a specific word. So the word is startled here. And so it's really important to know that in every single unit, in every single daily lesson, students are engaged and interact with explicit vocabulary instruction, which we know is important for all students, but especially for our students that are in need of some additional language support and are still acquiring language. We also wanted just to make sure, just to call out some different programming and different models. So in that transitional program where lower grades have more instructional minutes in Spanish and the amount of English increases each year, teams can use the Spanish program for reading instruction in lower grades and possibly incorporate the English through skills units or using the English flipbooks or image cards during that oral language time. And then as students get older, teachers can continue to think about how they can begin teaching knowledge units within English. The design of the program means that students will have built their background knowledge on many of the topics in Spanish, so that when the program model transitions to more reading instruction in English, students will be ready to transfer their learning. We also know that there are a lot of models that have that 50-50 split. So in a 50-50 program, English and Spanish teachers can collaborate to teach units together. Someone might decide to alternate teaching units. For example, unit 1 is taught in English, unit 2 is taught in Spanish, and then they might divide lessons of units between those languages as well. Another thing just to think about is that the unit themes and the rich vocabulary provide a lot of opportunities for our students to bridge content between languages. I think it's also important just to note, as we're talking about the Spanish program materials, that the Amplify Texas program has really done a lot of work on making sure that the lessons and activities are appropriate for both English and Spanish, meaning that we've adapted materials where they needed to ensure that students are successful and that both our English and Spanish speaking students are exposed to the same types of rigor and the same depth of the program in both languages throughout all of K-5. So I'm going to pause right there because I know that was a lot of information and some background over on the program design, and just wanted to make sure that there aren't any outstanding questions just on the overall program before we continue on. Libby, is there anything outstanding in the chat that I should hit before we move forward?
No, we've had a couple of questions about getting logged in and some applications. I saw that someone had their hand raised. I know you. I'm sorry. I'm not sure how to take someone off mute for them to ask their question live. So if you clicked raise hand, can you please type your question in the Q&A or in the chat, and we can respond to you. Sorry. Oh wait, hold on. I figured it out. So Jolynn, can you please unmute?
I am so very sorry. It was a complete accident. I did not mean to.
Okay, never mind. Now I have to figure out how to, never mind. Okay. There we go.
Now we know if we need to
now
unmute
we know.
somebody.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So yeah, everything else I think we've been able to answer live, or I've been able to respond in the chat. Yeah, I see a question from Michelle. We'll be looking at specific breakdown of minutes for the 3rd through 5th integrated blocks. And yes, I think Jamie's just about to dig into that.
Okay, super. So real quick, let's talk a little bit around the components, because the components are what are going to be important for all of you to make sure you understand of what you have access to when you're starting to thinking about your summer school programming, and then our recommendations for summer school. So you'll see that in K2 for the Skills Strand, remember that's the English language arts only, so only in English, not in Spanish, that we've got multiple things that are addressed in every unit and every lesson. So there's that systematic and explicit instruction approach to phonics. There's the connection to reading and writing. So students are engaged within student readers and taking the actual explicit instruction that they're working on decoding and applying it to the student readers in order to be able to connect that reading. And then the great part is that they're actually writing about what they're reading about. So that connection to reading and writing is really important to note here on the Skills Strand. Grammar, spelling, a lot of opportunities to engage within the writing process. So varied types of writing. So writing from the very early on of teaching students of pencil to paper, or of writing strokes and forming those writing strokes into different sounds and then putting those together, all the way to more formal genre specific writing, vocabulary, and then, like I said, some handwriting. So within the K2 Skills Strand, those are all the components that you can expect to see in a variety of different ways throughout daily lessons. Also, just thinking, whoops, let me go back here. Just a little closer look at the Skills Strand, you'll see that when you're looking at the Skills Strand lessons, things are starting with sound. We have a sounds first approach. We take those sounds that students have mastered sound and have had that explicit instruction, and then we're building to phoneme in order for students to be able to master code. And we often say, you know, build on the science of reading, cracking that code. So by the end of second grade, kindergarten, first and second grade have a really systematic approach to code instruction that's been explicitly taught within the grades, how that's overlapped from kindergarten to first to second, and then making sure that by the end of second grade, students have had explicit instruction in all of the code in both basic and advanced code. So things, as you can imagine, get a lot more complex over time within their grades and across grades, but that is our sort of approach to the skills strand, all based on the science of reading. In the knowledge strand in K2, this is where our students are learning through listening comprehension. They also have lots of opportunities to be able to collaborate with their peers, and then also writing embedded here. And so our writing approach within the program, K2 Skills and Knowledge, is making sure that students have multiple opportunities to connect writing and connect writing to text. So the text that's being used in skills is from the readers. The text that's being used in the knowledge strand is from those daily oral read alouds. The knowledge strand, remember, is both available in Spanish and English, so available to in both languages. There are daily read alouds. There are daily opportunities for discussion, everything connected to your TEKS standards. Another big important part to remember is that we are building background knowledge through these daily read alouds and through these opportunities to engage students in that word knowledge building as well. Their contents are building, so they're building content knowledge all while building their background knowledge and their vocabulary development, and then connecting to writing. And then also, as a part of daily lessons, students have an opportunity to apply. So they're taking what they're listening to, they're taking what they're sharing and speaking to with their peers and with their class, and then applying it in daily activities to continue to sort of stamp that understanding and stamp that knowledge building. And then when we move into third, fourth, and fifth grade, that's that integrated strands. We've now taken those two ropes and combined it. We're working really hard on that reading to learn side of things of Scarborough's rope. The integrated strand, both available in English and Spanish. It's important to note that we still have the focus on text. Our students are engaged daily in text. There are a variety of different topics, still building background knowledge through complex text, but students also have the opportunities to engage within that complex text within their student readers. So we're expecting that by that very early on in third grade, we're firming up those foundational skills. We're firming up that bottom strand of Scarborough's rope, and we're moving into reading to learn. So students are engaged in lots of opportunities for close reading, lots of conversations, peer collaboration, writing connected to the text, both informal and formal, more genre mode specific writing. They're responding to what they're reading about, vocabulary, grammar, morphology, all of that is included within the integrated strand units and within those daily lessons. I also just wanted to call out, just it's important to think of, and if you haven't experienced some of the materials, these are some examples from third, fourth, and fifth grade of what text looks like, what you can expect students to be engaged in when we're talking about student readers, that they're utilizing student readers that are built as chapter books. So they are building also in complexity as the students go through their readers. Readers are used in a variety of different settings, so whole groups, small groups, partners, independent. We have recommendations within the lessons of how those readers are used, but we also know that teachers know their students best, and we highly encourage teachers to be thoughtful around those recommended groupings based off of students' needs. You'll also see that there are multiple opportunities on this right-hand side here within the lesson of the different components that students will be engaged in. Word work daily that's happening specific to domain-specific vocabulary, and guidance for teachers around vocabulary instruction within those lessons, and then that importance of writing, so connecting that writing to the knowledge that they're building. It's amazing to see what happens when students are given an opportunity to learn some background and then connect it to something that they've been reading about and talking about, and what happens to writing. So that connection to writing and connection to background building that happens daily produces really amazing writers. So I want to spend the rest of our time together really focused on summer school. So I'm going to pause there and make sure that we're good. I think there's a couple questions that have come in. Libby, is there anything that I need to address around components before moving into the meat of digging into summer school recommendations?
So I'm not sure if this comes up next in summer school, but I know Michelle's question specifically was sort of like, what's the minute breakdown of the 3 through 5 lessons? Is that going to come out in the summer school section?
Yeah, we have some recommendations for what a daily schedule would look like. So number of minutes that you would need for summer school instruction. Yeah, we're going to get there.
Michelle, I wonder if your question was more around like the structure of the lesson itself. So if after Jamie shows those summer school examples, if you still have a further question, just go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll talk through what else you might need to know. And then Jamie, if we have time at the end, we might need to go back and just model the Texas Home Learning Amplify site one more time for folks.
Yep,
but other than that, we're good to go.
Okay, awesome. All right, so let's talk a little bit about summer schools. This is why we're all here. What we have done is we provided some selections for both kindergarten, first and second grade, so our K2 two strands, and then for our integrated strands in third, fourth, and fifth grade that have been really intentional and really focused on knowing that students are entering summer this year with some unique challenges, and some students are entering summer this year with challenges that they may have had for many years. And so we know that there are some skills that need strengthened. We know that there are some gaps that may have been created through a lot of, the scope of what's happened over a year plus in schools. And we also know that some students might be joining summer school that just need some reinforcement and some additional at-bats for instruction. And so we've kept all those things in mind when we're thinking about what can be really thoughtful around our recommendations. We also know that we need to provide some ideas around what to use and how to best use those. And so hopefully we'll get through and hopefully you'll leave here with a better understanding. I think our idea is that we want all of you as educators to feel confident and comfortable being able to utilize the program materials that you have access to right now in a way that is supporting students' learning and filling in any instructional gaps while you've got that extra time with your students this summer. So let's first, just so you know, so as we're talking through, we've got a couple different options here. So we're going to look at 3-week plans. We're going to look at 6-week plans. We're going to talk about, if you're thinking like, well, I have a different week plan, what that means. I also wanted just to point out that we'll focus on skills units, we'll focus on knowledge units, and we'll focus on integrated units. So just bear with me here. And we do have a one-pager that will help you have it all in one place too. So don't feel like you have to take copious notes of what's units, what lessons. I have a one-pager for you as well. So I wanted to talk to you first about the 3-week plan for skills. And so you'll see that we've identified 10 lessons within a particular unit for kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. So unit 7 for kindergarten, unit 3 for first grade, unit 3 for second grade, and those particular lessons that you can see here on the screen. We've identified 10 key targeted lessons based off of what we know about what's happening in kindergarten, first and second grade code knowledge. We've taken a look at our scope and sequence. We've taken a look at what basic code and advanced code is taught within these grades, and really honed in and targeted the lessons and the units that we felt like were best if we're looking for opportunities to reinforce instruction before moving on to the next grade while we have students with us in summer, and ways that if we have students that have some of these foundational code gaps, lessons and units that would be targeted to help reinforce those gaps and fill in some of those gaps. You'll also see that we have just listed out the materials that you would need. So obviously you're going to need access to the teacher guide on the Texas Home Learning website, some of the ancillary materials that accompany it, so that you may have letter cards, you might have sound cards, you might have image cards, you might have a variety of different materials, but all that available to you. And we can always navigate so that way you can see exactly where those are if you're not familiar. your student readers for skills, and then the student activity book pages. So all of those are available for you to use on the Texas Home Learning website. All of the units that we are suggesting are available and live now, so you have access to those. And they're all able to be done in a way that you can do these in a digital format. They're also able to be printed. So depending on what your format for summer is, you've got access to them to use them in a digital learning environment as well as in a print-based environment if you choose to print them as well. In terms of Amplify reading, we're also recommending in our kindergarten, first and second grade summer school programs that you utilize Amplify reading. If you're not familiar with it, it is our digital program that we've created specifically for K2 and you have available to you. That is a supplemental program. So it is adaptive based off of where students learning is at. So just their right fit levels. So it's adaptive, it moves them through and it adjusts based on how they're performing. So it can either move them forward, it can remediate them back, it can keep them at a level until they're ready to move forward. And our recommendations for K2 is that it's about 45 minutes per week. So when we look at that daily schedule here in a couple slides, you'll see where Amplify reading could fit in within your summer school program and on a daily schedule. You'll see here that we've built out a 6-week plan as well. And so you'll see that they are back-to-back units. And so if you have an opportunity and you have additional time with students in your summer school program, we've identified lessons from 2 accompanying skills units, about 10 lessons each. So about 20 or so days of instruction, depending on how many minutes of instruction you have. Remembering that a lesson is 60 minutes in order to get through that explicit instruction within skills. Same ideas apply. The materials that you need are all available, both in a digital format that you can use if you're teaching remotely, as well as if you are deciding to use them in a print version based off of being able to print them from the site. We're also recommending that you use Amplify Reading in addition to Amplify Reading is that opportunity as well to go off grade level if needed. And when I say off grade level, meaning that our skills instruction is core grade level instruction, we're going to obviously be reinforcing this summer with the identified units and lessons. That Amplify Reading gives you an opportunity to think about for those students who need something out of core. So whether it be in an intervention way that they need some additional instruction off grade level, below grade level, or they might need that other side of things. You may have students with you this summer who need that extension, that sort of challenge side of things. It will move them based off of where they're at. So that's really important to note there that it is meant for in addition to. Amplify Reading never replaces the core. It is a supplement and it's a great companion to your core outside of those 60 minutes of instruction. In terms of the knowledge strand, and remember the knowledge strand are now available for both English and Spanish. We've done the same. We've identified domains for each grade level and identified specific lessons at the grade level to give you about 10 days of lessons, knowing that this needs about 60 minutes of instruction in order to get through the full daily lesson. You'll see here that the K2 topics for the 3-week plan have been really thoughtful because they are all topics that build not only background knowledge within that grade, but then also across grades. So that continuity of topics that are building across your grades can really result into some pretty cool things in your summer school programming, or things that we think would be really cool, of some culminating summer school projects, some cross grade level projects. But it gives you an opportunity to be able to engage in some similar topics and knowledge building across kindergarten, first and second grade, as well as making sure that we are identifying key opportunities for comprehension, for word work, for listening, and for application, for students having an opportunity to apply what they are getting in those read alouds on a daily basis. And then you'll see the same for the 6-week plan. We've identified an additional domain if you have those additional weeks of instruction. The other thing I would mention here in both the 3-week and the 6-week plan, or however many weeks or days that your configuration ends up being for summer school, is that if you've been using the program, and we'll talk about this in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade as well. If you've been using the program and you haven't gotten through all of the domains, we would suggest on the knowledge side of things that you could continue with that domain. You could continue with where you left off. So if I finished in domain 10 in kindergarten, my suggestion would be to pick up in domain 11 in order to continue that building of that sort of systematic, that sequence of background knowledge. And so that's also another recommendation. If you haven't been using the program, these recommendations are great places of where to start, and where to start really thoughtfully for summer. We also want to make sure that teachers feel comfortable with delivering the program, and that your students are successful within the program. So if you're new as teachers and students using the program, these domains were selected for that purpose. If you're continuing, our recommendation is you can pick up where you left off to continue that background knowledge and that sequence that's being built, that you've been building, as you've been using the program materials. Same thing for materials here. You'll see that you've got access to on the Texas Home Learning site, your teacher guides, your flip books, your image cards, any trade books that you would need or have access to. Those are all available on the Texas Home Learning website.
Great. So Jamie, just real quick, I wanted to pause to answer a couple of questions about materials.
Sure.
So I think one thing that you mentioned ties in really nicely with a question that I got from Ms. Ball, asking about if what we're recommending for summer is a new unit designed specifically for summer school, or if it's a more focused revisit of the current posted units. So as you can see, as you probably noticed based on what Jamie said, what we're recommending for summer is a more focused revisit of the currently posted units. So Ms. Ball, if for example, you guys didn't get through all of the posted units, as Jamie said, you may choose over the summer to continue through the sequence of units and hit any units or lessons that you weren't able to complete during the school year. But this is not something new designed specifically for summer. And then we also got a question about printing the materials. And this person was anonymous, but they asked in the Q&A if our district wants to print hard copies of the 6-week summer school plan, does Texas Home Learning already have those units and lessons pulled out and ready to download? So there is not a separate specific unit on the website that says summer unit print here. You would need to go into the Amplify Texas website and locate the unit and print the full unit. And then the lessons that Jamie is recommended are not specifically pulled out. It would be a matter of going through the teacher guide and identifying the specific lessons that you want to implement. So we had a couple of really great questions there about units. And obviously, folks, if you want to do if you're not participating in the summer pilot, just to reiterate, you can still print these materials yourself from the website.
Super.
And that was it.
Okay, so we did provide just some recommendations and just some overviews of daily schedules. We understand that scheduling looks different depending on what your summer school program looks like, and these are some of our recommendations. Also knowing that you've got to make this fit within what you have for your minutes of instruction. These are our ideal recommendations. If we were designing a blanket statement around summer school programming, we'd be looking for these amount of minutes at a minimum for language arts instruction. So knowing that in K2 that we're highly encouraging that you're looking at both skills and knowledge. We know that students need both of those in order to become strong readers. And so an opportunity for students to engage within skills instruction this summer. And we're saying in K2 that skills instruction stays at 60 minutes of instruction. We're saying on the knowledge side of things, we were also sort of cognizant that you may not have 120 plus minutes for instruction. So our recommendation for knowledge is that students are having 30 minutes of daily knowledge lessons. That's why you'll also see that we pulled out some targeted lessons within the knowledge recommendation unit, or the unit lessons. So we're saying about 30 minutes of knowledge instruction daily. We're also recommending that there is some flexible time, so like 30 to 45 minutes daily of outside of core instruction. And so, our recommendations are not any different of what we would recommend during a regular school year, minus the, if you don't have a full 60 minutes for knowledge, as long as you're engaging 30 minutes of knowledge instruction daily, that would be recommended. So we always are recommending core instruction. We're also always recommending that you need additional minutes outside of core to address a lot of other needs. So in that additional time outside of skills and or knowledge, this is where Amplify reading can come into play. So that is something that can be done independently. This is where you're pulling small groups and meeting with students based off your data, guiding and using your data to guide instruction, using some of the additional features within the skills lesson, some of the additional supports, the pausing point days, all to reinforce instruction in order to really meet the needs of individual students and groups. And this is where we're also encouraging you to think about, how can I continue to engage my students in different types of reading? So opportunities to partner read and small group read, and opportunities for independent reading. Again, all recommendations, but things that we think are really important and are important as a part of an overall language arts experience, both core instruction and then just sort of that right fit needs instruction off of core. So a recommendation still for summer school ends up being 120 to 135 minutes of instruction, around 90 minutes of grade level core instruction that we're using really targeted lessons to reinforce skill development, both foundational skills and knowledge building skills, and then 30 to 45 minutes of outside of core instruction. That is, flexible based off of, additional supports and additional resources that you may have. Those additional resources that we talked about here are all connected back to Amplify as well, with Amplify reading, and then the partner reading with trade books and the student readers. But we know there are lots of really great resources for you to use for that outside of core time as well. Okay, let's move into third, fourth, and fifth grade. Let me check our time here, so that way we look like we're okay on time. So third, fourth, and fifth grade, we've got the same model. We have a 3-week plan, and then we have a 6-week plan. So remembering that third, fourth, and fifth grade units are both available in English and Spanish. What we've done in third, fourth, and fifth grade, because those strands are integrated, meaning that we don't have a separate skills and we don't have a separate knowledge, skills and knowledge are blended into that integrated approach. We identified units within the program that are based on a couple things. One, we've looked for units that are high interest, high engagement on the student side of things, but also have a really strong writing focus. We've heard from teachers and have been talking to a lot of teachers that they're looking for additional opportunities for writing instruction. And so these units that we've identified have some really strong writing instruction, some formalized writing processes that are embedded within the units. Obviously, our approach to writing is integrated, so there's writing in every one of our units, but these units we identified as particularly strong writing instruction, which is one of the main ideas of identifying them for summer school programming. So a question may be, well, I've already done unit 4, I've already done unit 5. And so similarly to what we talked about and what Libby mentioned as well, is that, if you've already been engaging in the units in third, fourth, and fifth grade and you've finished those, we would highly recommend that you continue with your next unit of instruction, because what we're doing there is we're continuing to build skill, we're continuing to build background knowledge and that word and world knowledge in a really explicit and systematic way. And we're continuing learning at grade level. If you have been using the program and you haven't gotten to the end of the program, the last unit in third, fourth, and fifth grade, that means that there are still standards and reading skills that haven't been firmed up. So that's why our recommendation would be to sort of pick up where you left off and continue that unit of instruction that wasn't completed at that point in the year. If you are new to the program, these would be our recommended starting points for you for summer school programming. And so I just wanted to explain those two things as a little bit of a different approach, obviously with not having a two-strand approach, being that they're integrated, and sort of our thought process and reasoning behind the units that were selected. The same suit follows with the 6-week unit. We identified a second unit around those same ideas: high interest, high student engagement, and an emphasis on writing, making sure that that writing was a focus that was connected to text. So you'll see that for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, that there are 2 units that were identified within the 6-week sample schedule or sample model as well. And then our recommendations overall, we are recommending the time ends up being a little bit longer for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade for a couple reasons. We are still recommending that in your core, that 90 to 120 minutes of instruction, that whole group instruction, that grade level core instruction, whether it be you're starting the unit for a unit with Texas Home Learning and Amplify Texas for the first time, or you're continuing and picking up where you left off. We want students to have that experience of grade level instruction to reinforce learning, to make sure that they're truly ready for, that they're getting that on grade level instruction and support before they move on to that next grade level. The other thing that we also are recommending is that there is outside of core time for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. I think we know that our students in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade who haven't mastered code need some really explicit instruction and opportunities to engage with some foundational skills opportunities. And so wanted to call out a couple recommendations of that off core time or that outside of core time, if you have that identified in your summer school programming. There's a lot of resources. There's some additional resources that are on the Texas Home Learning site in your Amplify Texas materials. The essential questions and prompts and the vocabulary lessons, these are all additional resources that live outside of your teacher guide. So the essential questions and prompts are directly connected, additional writing opportunities connected to that topic and the text that you're reading about within the unit. These are great additional practice, great ways also for teachers to scaffold some additional writing instruction into that connection back to text. The vocabulary lessons are additional. So these are supplemental vocabulary lessons that are included and available for you to use. And so we feel like that outside of core time would be a great opportunity to engage in some additional vocabulary instruction. We also know that it's really important for our students outside of core to be same as the school year, meeting with their teachers, reinforcing instruction, providing some interventions, some outside of grade level remediation needs. As well as engaging in different types of reading opportunities, partner reading, small groups, independent, and so forth, in a variety of different texts. So I think our recommendation stands as we are looking for a solid block of time for your grade level instruction in order to teach the lessons as they are designed, in addition to 30 to 45 minutes daily of outside of core instruction to be really meeting students where they're at, so that right fit instruction to fill some of those additional gaps that may have existed for a few years or maybe new based off of the course of this year. So it's important to think about those on grade level with the core program materials, and then what we're doing outside of that core and those additional recommended minutes. So I'm gonna pause there for a moment. And I wanna make sure before we, just some final wrap ups and some final reminders that we are, that I'm answering any summer school specific questions based off of our recommendations.
So Jamie, a couple questions I was able to answer in the Q&A. One person had a question about the Amplify Reading Adaptive Computer program that you mentioned. I just wanted to clarify for everyone that TEA is offering a free 2-year license that is for K through 2 students. And you can sign up for that license at the Amplify website that I've shared throughout the session. Any other questions from folks about summer materials?
So I'm going to drop into chat here just the overall recommendations. I know there were multiple slides with lots of different units and lots of different lessons. And so hopefully everybody can access that link there for our Amplify Texas K-5 summer recommendations. Like Libby said as well, if you're looking for more information on the Texas Home Learning Summer Supports, you can visit this link that is listed here, and we can drop this in chat as well. And then if you're also looking for how to access, so if you haven't used any of the materials and you're ready to register and sign up, you would do so there. And I know Libby's been sharing that link throughout the session as well. And so once you are registered, you'll have access to all of the Amplify Texas English Language Arts program materials. So you'll be able to access all of them at all grade levels.
Yep.
Okay. What
I got, let's see, I got a question here. Is the Amplify reading license free for 2 years starting this summer? No, the license actually launched in the fall of 2020. So the license has kind of already begun. And so it will expire in about September or October of 2022. Yes, and Barbara, you can sign up for the free license at the website link that Jamie just dropped. So the same place where you've been getting the daily instructional materials is where you can also sign up for the Amplify reading license. And Jamie, we had a request to go back a slide.
Yep.
And we have a question about units that support units with remediation for students reading below or far below grade level. Mm-hmm. So this is a great question. I'll answer real quickly, but I think Jamie might have a better sense of this. But our goal, if we're working to get students on grade level, is to really expose them to grade level content. But because the schedule is also differentiated, we've tried to plan for the ability to do small groups too, and really want to encourage people who are wanting to fill in some unfinished learning gaps to check out that adaptive computer program as well. Jamie, do you have any other thoughts on that in terms of remediation?
Yeah, I think on the remediation side of things, especially when we get to our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students, right, that gap just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And so I think for our 3rd through 5th grade teachers, sometimes it feels like they may not know where to go back to fill some of that lack of code instruction and those foundational skills. And so I would also say that, like Libby said, if we don't focus on grade level instruction, we only make the gap larger. And so we've got to make sure that we're focusing on grade level instruction and addressing that we know that students may have some below grade level gaps. And so for those below grade level gaps, I would definitely recommend, if you've got that additional minutes of instruction outside of your grade level, take a look at some of those skills units and those lessons that we identified. Those would be great places for you to be able to help 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers understand of where to go back in order to provide some additional lessons around decoding, phonics, phonemic awareness, things that a lot of 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers just may not do on a regular basis. So those identified lessons for K2 skills would be great for that outside of grade level core time if you have students in those grades who need some firming up of foundational skills.
Great suggestion, Jamie. Okay, well, that wraps up all the questions that I'm seeing right now in the Q&A and chat. So I just want to thank folks so much for being here. And this webinar will be posted on the Texas Home Learning website, which is also where you can learn more about the summer pilot opportunities. Hope everyone has a great evening, and thank you so much for being here.